Welcome to the Workplace Ninja Summit 2022 podcast. A live recording directly from Lucerne with interesting topics.
Good morning, everyone, and we are back on day 2 of the Workplace Ninja Summit, right from Lucerne. And on the first thing we have today on the table, Ryan, Esther, and Travis. And we are looking into some applications, AVD things, but let's see what happened in this conversation. But first, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Frans Oudendorp, and on the table, Travis, right?
I'm Travis Roberts. I'm a cloud infrastructure architect at RBA Consulting, and I also blog and produce the course Zero to Hero with Azure Virtual Desktop.
And Esther?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Esther Bartel. I've been in the industry for over 20 years. Let's keep it at that. Don't want to age myself too much. Mostly focused on end-user computing. And nowadays having a lot of fun with DevOps and automated deployments.
And the third person, Ryan.
Morgan, everybody. My name is Ryan Mangan. I'm the CTO for Appia, a application packaging and delivery technology platform here in the United Kingdom. Just a bit of background. I wrote the book Mastering Azure Virtual Desktop and been doing blogs about EUC for plenty of time.
So applications, Azure Virtual Desktop, RDS probably, that was in the past. So let's see what's happening. Today we are on the second day of the Workplace Ninja Summit. Are you enjoying the conference so far?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been great.
Finally in person?
That makes a huge difference. I do have to admit that I'm still a bit anxious about going back to in-person because being at home in my own private bubble is kind of relaxed. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's great to see everyone again, to have more interaction with the audience. That's like so much better than the virtual sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. How's that for you, Ryan?
I mean, let's be fair, it's an amazing turnout. You know, some great speakers, some great sessions. This morning I was at Richard Hicks's Always on VPN session, and it was brilliant because it's been, when you're watching videos, it's great, but it's very difficult to kind of have that interaction with the speaker and ask them questions. And everybody's got burning questions they want to answer, and you're time bound, aren't you, on a video?
Yeah, and Richard is one of my one of the key persons I want them to have an interview on later on today or tomorrow. But let's see what he has to tell about Always VPN. But now let's look in Azure Virtual Desktop. What is Azure Virtual Desktop and how can we use that, Esther?
Wow. So Azure Virtual Desktop is one of the DaaS solutions, desktop as a service or SaaS. It kind of depends on your definition. Mostly by making sure that you as a user or administrator still have some control over the configuration and still have some freedom to configure and to manage your systems, the virtual desktops for your end users.
How is that related to Windows 365, for example, Ryan?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thanks for throwing me under the bus. Do you know, I like to kind of use the analogy of different flavors of ice cream. Okay, so some people like chocolate, some people like vanilla, some people like mint. I don't like mint. And depending on the use case, for example, large organizations are more likely to look at AVD over cloud PC based on, consolidation of desktops. You look at the likes of these organizations who do load testing and you can get more for your money by consolidating to multi-session. But then you've got this new launch of Windows 365, the cloud PC, which opens doors for like Mac users in design, print companies who have small numbers of desktops but need Windows applications. So they get a guaranteed set fee. But it's a new use case. It's opening up more doors. And then just recently they mentioned Dev in a Box, and that's awesome as well because developers can on the fly, like myself, because obviously a bit of a developer in the background. I can basically connect anywhere and develop, whereas I was used to be bound by a specific development PC.
Yeah, if we look at Azure Virtual Desktop, before we heading over to the Azure Gallery and so on, Esther, we need to deploy.
Yes.
Why should I use Bicep?
Well, why shouldn't you use Bicep? Well, I think first of all, I do understand that if you are looking more for a multi-cloud solution and are not Azure only, then Bicep probably will not be your choice of infrastructure as code deployment automation tooling. But if you are full in on Azure, I think you should look into Bicep because it makes creating ARM templates, which is the core of automation for cloud, for Azure, so much easier than the JSON structure and syntax that you need for your ARM templates. And I showed yesterday in my session, with the Bicep extension installed in Visual Studio Code, life is so easy, and within 5 minutes you can have like a full, well, my example still was a simple storage account example first, but if you go for the AVD deployment, backplane for instance, to start with, then I'm guaranteeing you that within 10 minutes you can have your full AVD backplane deployed, especially if you go to Freek's repo and download the code.
Yeah, Freek, it's terrible that he isn't here because he had some other things to do at a new employer. So sad for him, but yeah, we are enjoying the conference so far.
Yeah, definitely. But I did tell him that he is missed. And it felt kind of weird to do the presentation without him. Yeah. Because to be really honest, usually when things get tough, Freek gets the demos. So today or yesterday, I also got to prove to myself that I am capable of showing all the demos myself. But still, it would be nice to have Freek there as well.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you're doing well, I think.
Yes.
I didn't see the session, but I think it went well. I got some good feedback on that. So.
Yeah, Travis and Ryan were there, and they were very positive as well.
It was great.
Yeah, that definitely builds character and makes me even grow a couple of inches, probably.
Yeah, but good. Bicep is to enroll and to see how we get AVD online. But why should I? You had a presentation about the Azure Image Gallery and so on. Why should I use the Azure Image Gallery to deploy?
It was, the name was changed recently. It's Azure Compute Gallery, but yeah, it manages now images and applications. So with a Bicep or template deployment, we can refer to image definition, which is a collection of your different image versions. May seem complicated, but basically we're just telling it to grab the most recent, the newest image, because with AVD, one of the most complex or the time-consuming part of creating that environment is getting the base image correct for your organization, because that is unique for every organization. It's kind of, I tell people it's akin to the Windows 7 to Windows 10 upgrade. You have to go through and verify all your applications are compatible, that they're configured properly, your start menu layout, all that. So that base image is really important, but as time goes on and you make these updates to that image, you need a place to store them. You'll want to distribute them to different regions if you're making that host pool or host pools available in other regions, or just for a DR site. You want to make sure that those images are in the other region. And that's all what Azure Compute Gallery can give you. So it ties into the Bicep deployment really nicely, because now you can deploy and know that it's going to use the most recent copy of that image every time.
Yeah, and then we have AVD deployed with an image, with Bicep, with code, and then we need to maintain the whole environment.
And
Ryan,
use something on that image, Ryan.
Yeah, and I think you've just opened a whole can of worms here, because what seems to happen, and let me give you some kind of really brief stats. There's over 7 trillion applications of variants, Windows applications in the world today, and that's basically manifested itself over the last 30 odd years. And a lot of organizations are not able to kind of just lift and shift, and develop new very quickly. There's like 5-10 year cycles for development. Manufacturing organizations can't just do that. And the point I'm making here is, if you decide that you've done the deployment, you've done all of the image, you've got everything ready, then you want to deploy the apps, you should have done the assessment well before then. you should have understood what the apps were, you should have categorized the applications, and you would have started looking at the compat issues you may experience in that transition. And it's a very common issue. And it's not going to go away, and I don't think it will go away with our lifetimes of work, if I'm honest with you.
No, and I think a lot of customers still need to be guided in that process, in application management, and really understanding the impact of their application configuration on the desktop that their users are using. So.
And you've completely nailed it. And then the biggest kind of topper on all of this is, and we all know from all the threats and some of the things mentioned in yesterday's keynote, was about, Windows 11 was less likely to be hacked than other OS versions. Is when you're going through security compliance now, because every organization has an objective to be security first. That's what everybody wants now, to make sure that they don't get ransomware or all the other horrible things which come out, is that the application needs to meet specific requirements for security. And the likes of MSIX adoption is very important for that, because it runs in a container. But then you've got AppV, which has got an end of life cycle of 2026. So there's lots of these different variables you've got to consider and factor in when you're transitioning. And then just to add on top of that, my favorite subject of all is MSIX App Attach, which you can obviously read about in my book, or my books. And that basically is effectively taking an MSIX package and extracting it into a disk, and then it gives you this dynamic application delivery. So you can in session deliver, remove. It's a zero-touch experience if you configure it, that is. Gives you this flexibility in the world.
Yeah, and with MSIX, you can update the operating system without touching applications and so on. So I think from a maintaining perspective, that is really helpful to organize your stuff on your environment.
And the icing there as well, it's like there's always these extra layers of benefit when you look at it. Is MSIX, you can have multiple versions of the same app. So you might have someone in HR which needs a specific version of Chrome, and then you might have someone, or let's say operations need another version of Chrome. You can just change the version number and the name of the package in MSIX, and they all run because they run in a container, and they will not impact each other on the operating system. So the benefit of using this technology now is you can have everything you want. You don't have to have a separate image. It can be the same image, the same experience, but the different apps are associated to the different organizations, well, groups in the organization.
Travis, if we have an operating system in AVD, we deploy that by Bicep from the image we have in the compute gallery, all the applications are not related to that operating system because it's delivered with MSIX. Why should I need a disaster recovery environment for my AVD on that moment?
You have to bring it up someplace else. So sometimes there may be times when the applications aren't certified for MSIX App Attach, or there might be custom applications, or there may be support issues with that. So there's really a blended environment with that. So yeah.
Yeah,
basically what Travis is saying, that also disaster recovery, or our definition of disaster recovery, has changed over the years. Especially now when we have all these quick options to deploy instantly, like new environments with Bicep, and using images from. It becomes easier to do a new deployment in a different region instead of having to make sure that you have everything backed up and then restore in a new region. So I think that gives it a lot more power to be flexible in where are we going to deploy the images that we have versioned and managed, the applications that we have versioned and managed, and make sure that we layer that together to have a quick disaster recovery solution, which is nothing compared to disaster recovery that we did like 5-10 years ago, where it was more like backup, restore, and keeping your fingers crossed that on different hardware it would still perform.
And there's, with Azure Virtual Desktop, there's multiple ways we can deploy that. So we can deploy it in what's called a pooled host pool, where we have a very generic OS, and the user profiles are managed with FS Logic, so they're portable. And in that environment, if we want to do a failover, we can stand up a new host pool very easily with if we have the templates in place, but we still need to manage those profiles. How are we going to make them available at the other site? And then the other option is with a personal host pool, where every user gets their own workstation. It's a one-to-one mapping. And sometimes in that environment, you may not need FS logic. So now you have the profile on the C drive like you would just like a workstation at the office. So in that environment, it's different. So the DR strategies for those two environments are going to be very different and use different tools to manage that.
Yeah, so basically AVD is needed to running more or less client-server applications because we have a back end that needs to be delivered to a customer on the front end. What is the future of AVD in your opinion, Ryan?
Yeah, so you said something quite interesting, and just to kind of finish off on the DR thing first, was the interesting thing we've got to understand when we're doing apps is that near line, near site is also important to understand. So when organizations move to AVD and they get this AVD environment and they're connecting on premises to the back end of a system, the challenge you'll experience is potentially latency and delays. So it's also important to kind of take your line of business back-end systems and make sure they're on Azure with that to ensure that you don't have any latency issues. In terms of the future of AVD, there's a lot of stuff which is just hit, preview. There's lots of focus on kind of improving the delivery of applications. A lot of organizations like Sage are now delivering a service. So it's a SaaS remote app delivery of Sage application now. So I think we're going to see a larger adoption from these software as a service companies delivering their apps out as a remote app. I think we're going to see an acceleration. We've seen a 60% growth, I think, in AVD in the last couple of years, Microsoft was saying. And I think that's going to increase because, let's face it, how many times have you had to go into the office or go into the server room and data center and fix a switch or fix a hypervisor? The pain you have to go from a physical. All of that's gone now. If something goes wrong in a region, like Travis said, effectively you just fail over to another region, you deploy out again. The whole problem of on-premises, make sure I make that very clear, not premise, on-premises everybody, it's painful. It requires a lot of effort. I understand if you've got a lot of infrastructure and a lot of technical debt or a lot of investment in that makes sense to continue as you are. But when it comes to modernizing or new, I call them cloud era organizations, startups who start up when cloud's there, it makes more sense to leverage pay as you consume because you can modernize from day one.
Yeah. And the other advantage to that too is as we found when the pandemic hit, if you needed to scale up on our VPN endpoints or you needed to put out laptops or support working from home, it was very difficult, if not impossible, to get the equipment to do that. So with Azure, scaling out to Azure, either AVD or Windows 365, you can buy that infrastructure or rent it at an OpEx, and then when you're done, return it. You stop paying for it. So you don't have this huge capital expense, the lead time for waiting for parts to be delivered or equipment to be delivered and then installing it. So,
but look at COVID as well. You nailed it straight on that point. Yeah. Look at how many organizations went to the local computer shops. We have in the UK PC World, and the people just buy loads of laptops, and then all of a sudden they're installing the connector and connecting to a work desktop. There's no VPN. It was literally just get a desktop.
Yeah, and I'm sure that this goes at many different countries, but if you need to double, triple your internet capacity, there's not a switch that you just flip for that. It's a requisition process, and you put it in a queue, and you go to your telecom provider, and you wait, and they're busy too, because you're not the only company doing that at that moment. So being able to go scale out to the cloud is really I think one of the reasons why they saw such growth.
Yeah, but I think it also shows not to just start pinpointing vendors or anything. But one of the things that I love about IGEL, who is more focused on the endpoint and software, or endpoint as software, if we're getting into that, is that they had this great vision that a couple of years ago we were all going like, I'm not sure if this whole idea of selling not just hardware as endpoints, like thin clients used to be defined, but turning it into endpoint as a software, all of a sudden, their vision was the best solution during COVID to make sure that our end users, even if they had only old equipment at hand, still with their software could be turned into a fully functional Thin client combined with AVD to give you the best end user experience on a workplace.
And if we look at the future, is it more delivering applications instead of a desktop?
Yeah, but I think from if we're talking about the Netherlands, that's always been a hard discussion because somehow the Netherlands, and maybe that's because we are accustomed at the office that we had our own desks, physical desk, and we could put like the pictures on there, and it feels like the Dutch workforce has also had that emotional bond with a desktop, a virtual desktop even, where it feels, for the Dutchies, it feels kind of weird, even with all the SaaS applications, we still want to log on one system, one virtual desktop, and then use all the SaaS applications or even, I was going to say legacy application, but like the client server applications that are still out there. Yeah. So I think from a Dutch customer perspective, it's still a hard bargain to get them to transition to a portal where applications are delivered individually. But I do think from a global perspective, that is definitely where we're going. Just more flexible, similar to using your mobile device with all the different apps and just having your device being the portal. I think that is the future definitely for workplaces as well.
Nice.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, as it was the expression. You pick up an Android phone, you pick up an Apple phone, and you go to the store and you click on your apps and you get your apps. That's all people want. Is there a manual for an Android phone? Is there a manual for an Apple phone? No, there isn't. You don't need one. It's very straightforward, right? Yep. And I think that's where VDI, desktop as a service, this whole modern workspace platform needs to go. I want to see serverless VDI. I want to see you get an app and it works on any platform, anywhere. Mac, Linux, Windows, it doesn't matter, you get it. But I do think we're probably about 5 to 10 years out for that.
Now let's see what happens in the next few years, few months, years, and so on. And but thanks for joining me on the table today. We have finished this one, and really looking forward to other recordings that we will do this day and tomorrow. So please join in if you want. Thanks for you to join.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
great. Was a nice thing to discuss all the AVD, but I think there is lots of stuff that is coming also in the next year on AVD and for customers that we can deliver. So stay tuned for all the things that happen. Probably at Ignite there will be more news to come on this topic. So if you want to join, please visit the live stream, or afterwards this recordings will be published in the Spotify, Google Podcast, and all the other audio stuff, but also on YouTube afterwards. So let's see what happened there. Thanks for all the thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Yes.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks.